I want you to get into your own personal time machine, and I want you to go back in time to the last time that you felt completely overwhelmed and slammed in your business. I want you to think about how it felt. I want you to think about how frustrated you were, how tired you were, how you probably said to yourself or your partner or your kids, like, I'm sorry. I promise I'm never going to do this again. And I want to ask you what you're doing right now to prevent that from happening to you again. My guest today is Rick Liston. He is an Australian wedding photographer who I met in Las Vegas at WPPI this past spring. And he runs a virtual assistant agency called Wedding Workflows, which is a little bit of a misnomer because it's not just for wedding photographers and it's not just about workflows. This is a regular virtual assistant agency, except that these virtual assistants who work for him are all trained specifically to work with photographers. So things like your upload, download, getting things ready on your gallery software, working in photography specific CRMs, the emails and kind of communication that needs to go along with photography, blogging, social media. Like there's a lot of different things that we do in our businesses that don't need to be done by us. And these VAs are trained specifically to do that. So when I met Rick at WPBI, I was like, oh yeah, you're going to need to come on the podcast and share more about this business with my audience. And our conversation today is not a short one because we cover a lot of different things about kind of the mindset blocks around outsourcing and automating. And then like all the way toward, halfway through, we get into more of the nitty gritty of working with a VA. This conversation is definitely worth your time and attention, especially if you don't currently have any sort of assistance in your business. Without spoiling it, I will say that once he gives you your code and your directions on how to sign up for a trial, you are going to see that this is a very reasonable price point and way to kind of dip your toes in the water of trying out working with an assistant. So I hope that you have some big aha moments. I hope that this conversation empowers you and kind of emboldens you to take that step, because I can speak from personal experience. Having assistants, having people who are lightening the burden for me in my business has made all of the difference. And I would love to get more photographers on board with not trying to do absolutely everything themselves.
Welcome to This Can't Be That Hard. My name is Anami Tonkin, and I help photographers run profitable, sustainable businesses that they love. Each week on the podcast, I cover simple, actionable strategies and systems that photographers at every level of experience can use to earn more money in a more sustainable way. Running a photography business doesn't have to be that hard. You can do it, and I can show you how.
Hey, Rick, welcome to This Can't Be That Hard. It's great to see your face and have you on the show. How are you today?
I'm honored, absolutely honored today. I was honored a couple of weeks ago when I got to meet you for the first time, and I saw you walking that trade show floor, and should I go and approach her? No, I wouldn't be so bold. But then there's this little thing that my daughter often does, and she's like, Daddy, if I can do it, you can do it. And she's really good at like approaching people. She doesn't know to ask for stuff. We go to the supermarket or something and she doesn't know where the popcorn is. She just, it's easy. I'll just go and ask this person. And so I just channel, what would Vedra do? And went up and said hello. And now here we are a few weeks later having a chat on your pod. So.
Oh, that's very sweet and very silly. Oh, thank you. It's great to have you. It was such a fun time getting to meet you and chat with you and learn more about your business. And as soon as I heard more, I was like, I need to not sit on this. This needs to be a conversation that I share with my wider audience. So I'm really excited for what we have to talk about today. Why don't we start by, I'm going to have you introduce yourself and your sort of photography background, and then I want you to introduce your other business, and I'll let you take it from there.
So I'm an Australian wedding photographer, not a particularly gifted one in terms of the art form. So Nobody's going to be coming to me for like, oh my God, the style of this guy. But I think something that I do incredibly well is stay local and look at it from, I guess, a business first point of view. So securing kind of sustainable leads, sustainable income, and then for myself taking a step back from as many things as I possibly can. And the good thing about all of that is that just about everything I do is entirely replicable. All right, so the business that I run, we get probably 500-600 leads a year, shooting over 100 weddings a year. All of that is based on things that everyone else can do. So it's not based on my incredible photos. If that makes sense. So I think in a way it's more inspiring because it's not like, oh, okay, I understand because his photos are so amazing, but I could never achieve that because he's so gifted. It's no, I was just a dad who was desperate, moving back to Australia with my wife and daughter at that time with no savings and no income, and like, all right, okay, I need to make sure I don't fail. It's amazing what can come out of desperation. So just looked at it like, all right, where are my target audience going to be? And for me, it's like they're walking in the doors of venues every day, so I need to do whatever I can to get on those preferred suppliers lists. And fortunately, as photographers, there's so many things we can do for venues to help them out, to help them stand out in their own saturated markets. That for me, it's really easy. Probably the best use of your time in the beginning is to build those relationships, because that for me has then been a sustainable source of leads for the rest of my career, and should hopefully continue to be so.
Amazing. And you're absolutely right. Like desperation or at least that need, the necessity really can be the best kind of motivator, where you're like, look, I may feel uncomfortable, even kind of like your story before about, giving yourself a pep talk. I feel that way often when I'm approaching either vendors or an educator that I want to talk to, or any of the above. It's like I have to give myself permission. But when it comes to like, it's either that or my business isn't going to work and I'm going to have to go back to my, quote unquote real job, like you get scrappy. And I think that is really inspiring.
I'm glad to hear that. There's probably a part of your audience right now is like, well, if I don't have anything to learn from him on a photography point of view, then what am I doing here? Which leads me to the next thing that we started doing, and what I'd love to talk about you today is just the steps that we took to automate and delegate so that I could elevate, right? So basically all small businesses kind of go through this stage of progress where you're starting out, obviously you're super passionate, you're taking on all this work that you can, but basically you reach this point, if you're good, right, and where you're getting in enough jobs and you've got the word of mouth going, and then you're like, okay, I feel like I've achieved everything I wanted to start with, but now I'm at this point where I'm kind of working 12-hour days, 7 days a week, and I'm not actually living the life that I envisioned when I first started this. So typically we probably do start a photography career thinking, oh, this is going to be great because I've got flexible hours, I get to work when I want to work, be my own boss. But then, oh, wait a second, I'm working way more than I used to, and if you're like, this is not the version of my life that I planned for, because now it's eating into a lot of really super important things, eating into my sleep, and eating into my personal relationships, eating into my health, eating into my willingness to do the thing that I loved.
Right.
So it's taking a toll on that, and there is a very real cost when it comes to overworking yourself. Okay, so basically you reach that point where you're either going to burn out or you change. And so if you're at that point, I'd love to talk through what that change might look like.
Yeah. So talk to me about sort of how you got into automating and delegating, and then we'll get into how you started making that possible for other photographers.
So I think on both of those fronts, it probably comes down to, I'm going to say accounting background, but basically an accounting mindset. So like accountants are all in my family, and my dad raised me on opportunity cost and risk and return. Those concepts have always stayed with me. And so for me, it's all right, what is the opportunity cost of my time here? So if I am spending my time repeating a task that could either be automated or delegated, that is taking away from what I otherwise could have been doing. And if there is a more high priority task, if there is a way that I could have been earning more money doing that, then of course I'm going to do it. Especially when it comes like for automation, and that's obviously what you do so well, that's a real no-brainer and like the first place to start. So even in like your client journey where you spend your time writing so many emails back and forth. If you're writing a single email, right, that you feel somebody else might need to know as well, then that needs to go into a workflow that is answering that question before they have a need to ask it. All right. So this is obviously a headache they have, a problem that needed solving. Perhaps there's a nightmare on the day during the session. You're like, that could have been prevented by information. I'm going to put that into a workflow so it solves that problem, answers that question automatically, and before they have a chance to ask it. So there's a bit of an art there in knowing when to send that out. That's why I typically prefer, like, if you've got from the time somebody books to the time of the shoot, you might have, with portrait photography, obviously, you might have a couple of weeks there to send that information out, and certain information is going to be more relevant at different times. So that's why I prefer a workflow versus here's one large document that you typically might not get a chance to read through. But if it's like, all right, 1 week from now, this is what you need to be considering. 3 days from now, this is what you need to be considering. The shoot's tomorrow. These are the last points.
Yeah.
And then that obviously just helps prevent all those headaches and prevent the amount of time it takes you writing those same emails back and forth. So yeah, big fan of automation on that front, just because I can't even trust myself, right? If it's up to me to remember to cover all this, I won't. I will fail, and the session will be worse. So I'm actually improving the client experience by automating it.
For those of you who are listening and not watching, which is 99% of people, I'm sitting here just nodding my head over and over again because I am 100% on the same page. I feel like it is in some ways easier to just create this large document or, huge handbook that you're like, here you go, here's a guide to working with me. But the fact of the matter is, not only is somebody unlikely to read that, if they do sit down to read it, they're not going to retain all the little bits and pieces. So you serve them and yourself a lot better by just dripping out information. And my mantra is give them the information they need to know to make the next decision that they need to make, or to get ready for the next thing that's coming, because that's what's relevant to them. So that information is going to stick in their heads. But this is a little bit of a sidetrack. I just wanted to underline the importance of what you were saying there.
Thank you very much. And I know obviously we do put a lot of effort into these guides that we make. So it's a great opportunity to obviously get our photos in front of them, get our branding, our voice, all that kind of stuff. So I would just say to put that into a lead magnet. All right. So making a guide that perhaps then collects their email addresses and then goes into an email sequence. Once again, automated marketing for you.
So good. So you started to do this in your own business, it sounds like, right from the get-go, which is amazing because it took me a long time. And there's all that opportunity cost of many years where I feel like I was just kind of, oh, well, it's not a big deal to write the same email that I write to everybody over and over and over again. And it wasn't until I was a little bit further down the road that I started to see the importance of systematizing and automating all that stuff.
I wish I could say I was the same. I wish I could say it was from the get-go. Not the case, though. I also had to learn the hard way by mistakes, and just had a very important lesson given to me by my daughter. That was just another night where she's come home from school, and she wants to see me, she wants to chat, she wants to play, and I'm there on my phone, trying to rework a bloody Instagram caption to say that this wedding day was so stunning in a new and creative way. And she said, "Daddy, do you love them more than me?" And there's no answer that I could have given as to why I'm constantly giving my time to these clients. Like, what is the purpose of this business, right? Like my life here is not to run this business. The purpose of this business is to serve the life that I want to live. And I want to be a present dad. I want to be a present partner. I want to have great relationships with my friends, and I want to be able to look after myself as well. And so starting with that end in mind, right? And you had a great chat with Kirsten Sweeting, I think. About this as well. So starting with that end in mind, right? So what life do I want to live, man? What legacy do I want to leave? What kind of relationships do I want to have with people? To me, I was actually at a funeral 2 days ago, and there's no better way than thinking about that very end, right? As opposed to just 1 year from now. But what do I want to have people say about me? Like, what relationships will they remember? Like, what the impact on their lives will I have made? And if it's like, oh, he didn't have time for me because he was too busy doing stuff that could have either easily been automated or delegated, right? Like, you spend 6 hours a day on his phone getting served ads. Like, that's to me, that is no way to live, man. We have one precious and beautiful life, a finite amount of time in which to live it. We have no idea how long we're going to have. So I want to make sure that I'm tenacious about how I'm spending that time, and kind of went down that pathway off the back of that incredible question that my daughter asked me, and that shot me straight through to, I guess, okay, yeah, this is my daughter's questioning if I love my couples more than her. This needs to change.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, seriously, like what a dagger in the heart. But it's amazing that you were able to sort of take that and let that be that turning point. And I'm personally just glad to hear that it's not just me, that I'm not the only one who took far too long to kind of come to that. But it is amazing once you start looking for opportunities to outsource and delegate and automate, how many opportunities there are. I mean, I think when I first started thinking about automating and delegating, I was like, I just don't have enough tasks out there, that I'm doing that would be suitable. And it took me a while to kind of come to that. So yeah, I'm gonna let you keep going.
Yeah, you would not be alone. So that's just about everybody. And the thing is, that's because you've built your business doing everything yourself, right? So you've been amazing at getting your business to this point, right? But then at that point, what got you there just won't get you to the next stage, and that's where you have to look at now. Okay, even though doing everything myself has allowed me to get to this stage, I need to start looking at which parts am I doing. Just because at that point you've got a very clear distinction between priorities of your time. There are certain things that I'm going to be doing in my business that either brings in a lot more income or lights me up a hell of a lot more than these other things. So if I can be earning, $500, $1,000 an hour by doing a shoot, that's where I need to be spending my time. So if I'm limiting the opportunities of earning that $500 or whatever it is an hour, because I'm so busy doing tasks that could either be automated or outsourced, then it's costing you, right? It's costing you $1,000 an hour to do a $7.50 task. Right. So that's the opportunity cost right there. And you're absolutely right that it does get easier. So on that automation front, basically, anytime you're writing an email that you feel like this could be information that every one of my clients could benefit from, that goes into an automated sequence, that goes into the workflow. You just pick the time before the shoot that should go out, take the time to write it well, and then you don't have to write it again. Okay. Yeah. And then on the delegation front, once you start looking at everything you do in your business and recognizing that somebody else can help you do this, and it takes starting with one thing, right? And it's like, okay, this is working now. This is now off my plate. Wow, I don't ever have to do another bank reconciliation in my life, because you're looking at it like, why am I spending my finite time on this planet, finding my Adobe subscription receipt and, plugging it every single month, plugging it into my tax records. Once you do one thing and you're like, that's off my plate, that's working well, it helps you start looking at the next thing. You're like, all right, is this something that is procedural, right? Is this something that is the same process with every shoot? So I've just done my shoot. I've got my photos. Now the process is to edit them, and then I want to put them onto a blog. I want to make a social media post from them. I want to make a social highlight stories. I want to try to look for a reel that's trending and put the photos in from that. I need to send the photos to the client. There was a hair and makeup artist involved. I'd like to send it to them as well. I need to get the Instagram handle address of that vendor, of that hair and makeup artist. I had a dog too, perhaps a dog groomer, because I feel like the Instagram, channel of those dog groomers actually would be a fantastic place for me to, find my target audience as well, because I'm really good at dog photos or family photos with dogs. So like all these little things that, help your business. And typically, you either are doing them yourself and you're probably not happy about it because it does take a lot of time. There's other things you'd rather be doing with your life, right? Or B, you're not doing it because it's a pain in the ass. So this is the stuff where you're like, all right, and let's now get somebody else on this. And then once you do start like recognizing, all right, this is procedural. Now, what would it take to teach somebody to do this? Are there any variances in what I'm doing? So fortunately, we've got some great software like Loom, which basically like records your screen. You got a little video of yourself in the corner, and you can just talk through the process. Like, okay, this is where I go to find the photos from this shoot. I go into my pick time gallery here, and at the top here, these are the highlights. So I'm going to make a slideshow from these highlights. So I click this button to make slideshow, and now I need to find music that matches the beat and that it has 67 slides. So now I go into my favorites thing and I find a music track that has 67 slides, listen to it. Does that sound ridiculous or does that sound passable? Okay, great. I'm going to use that one. And now I have a slideshow. Okay, so now I've got a slideshow. I've got my gallery. I'd like to make a blog on my page because I'd love all the friends of this particular couple to be going and spending their time on my website so that I'm getting the traffic, and then they can see, all right, is this something that I'd like to book for myself? They have the contact information there, they have the other portfolios. So this is the process now of making a blog. It's entirely achievable once you start recognizing what things are procedural to delegate to somebody else.
Yeah. And I actually like that you kind of went all the way down that task rabbit hole and talked it through, because what's impressive there is, we all do all of those things and we don't even think about them because we're doing them over and over again. And, it's just part of our workflow. But anyone who thinks that they, as the artist, are required to have their hands all over every step of that business is basically tying a weight around their own ankle. Like that is, it's not important that you make your own slideshows. PickTime, if you're going to use a, PickTime software, which is what I use, it's what Rick uses, like that is a great tool. But there are plenty of other great tools out there, and none of them require you to sort of hand make that experience. Now, if you have a business where that's what you sell yourself on, is that like your hands are on every little bit of it and you hand make your albums and you go and have 100 meetings with your clients, great. I'm sure that you are charging $1 million a wedding for that. Like that's what you should be charging if you're not, because that is the piece, right? Time is the piece that we can't make, we all have the same number of hours in a day. So when you think about all of those steps and how many of them could be outsourced and or automated, that's when you start to understand that you have a huge amount of untapped available time in your business.
That's right. So yeah, a couple of things there. So I find it almost amusing sometimes, even for myself, when it comes to the things that we allow ourselves to outsource and what we don't, right? So we obviously outsource the hunting, the growing, the preparation of our food. We outsource the care of our children, the education of our children, our health to obviously professionals, our haircuts, all of these things, right? But we draw the line at our social media and making slideshows. I'm going to outsource the care of my children, but I have to make my own slideshows.
Right.
And so when you're talking about, obviously, my business, I do everything myself. I hand make all these things, and that's the service I provide. And I have the 100 meetings. I was the same, all right, until I asked myself the question, what would my business look like if I didn't? What would my life look like? What, am I put on this planet to be a wedding photographer, to spend my time on this planet in these meetings, or to live it the way that I want to live, right? To be part of the natural world, to have great human connections with the people that I love the most. And then I was like, okay, what will my business look like if I didn't do these things? And it was even little things like making the USB boxes, and it's just like something I'd always done. And then I was just like, going through this process makes you question almost everything, where you are spending your time in your business, and what would my business look like if I didn't do this? Would I stop getting leads? Would people stop paying me for my services? Because I hated making those little USB boxes because I shoot a lot, right? They would just pile up, and I'd put it off, and then like, oh my God, today's the day. I got to make all those handwritten cards, got to make the wrapping. I got to, I don't know, all this different design. Even just taking it down to the post office, writing all the addresses out, it just seemed like a really bad use of my time. And I was like, okay, if I just stopped doing this and then instead had an automated, basically in my PickTime, like a sales automation that said, hey, here's a $150 print credit. You can use it to order a USB box if you would like, or you can make that investment decision yourself and spend it on absolutely anything else you like. And guess what? Nobody orders the USB box. They much prefer something else. And as long as I'm still showing up on the day, providing a great experience, like nobody's judging me on that USB box afterwards, right? It's they're paying me for wedding photos, and they had an amazing time experience with me on the day. Because even the lead up to the day, because my client journey is impeccable, and I don't mind saying that, it really is something good. They feel so prepared on the day, and I'm prepared on the day because I have so much information about them that I turn up and they have an incredible experience. So they've decided that they're raving fans before I've even taken a single photo, before they've seen a single photo. Everyone in the bridal party knows about it. When I walk into that room, they're raving fans, and that's thanks to the automation beforehand. It's not reliant on even in-person meetings. All right. So for me, I was just doing, I don't know, 5 of those a week, and I was in-person meetings instead of being at home when my daughter was coming home from school, or having a glass of wine with my wife, and I'm like, all right, what would my business look like if I didn't have these? If I just take out this little paragraph on my lead response that says, booking a meeting with me here, and just change that to, if you'd like to lock this in, here's the quote. And you know what? It was actually a hell of a lot more efficient, because any questions that they have, these are things that I could answer either in that initial lead response or later in that journey.
There is a fair amount of ego that we like to tell ourselves is us trying to care for our clients. And I really do encourage people again and again to look at their client journey from the very first contact where they find you all the way to the very end, and ask, what is it that you are providing that only you can provide in order to provide that good experience for your clients? And it's fewer pieces of the puzzle than most of us would like to think. But again, that freedom that comes when you sort of embrace that is pretty incredible. I would love to talk about your business.
So we have a service that provides virtual assistants that help kind of burn out photographers. So it helps them achieve, I guess, their greatest purpose. So if you've decided that your purpose is not wasting your time doing procedural tasks, then that's what we are here to do. And for me, the benefit is not just improving your quality of life, but the quality of life of your virtual assistant as well, because they love this job. It's so great to see it. And I hear it from so many of the photographers that come back, like, I didn't understand how amazing I would feel from the gratitude that they have for working with me, which is, I think, a really unknown benefit of going down that path as well. So yeah, we provide VAs, and it started just with my own virtual assistant. And I was looking at all the resources that I'd provided in order for my VA to help me. And I realized, well, like the things that they're doing, like the resource hub we've got right now, are operating procedures of how to do all these things. And there is a barrier to obviously creating all of these operating procedures and training a virtual assistant on how to run your business. So I realized I'd already kind of done all those hard yards there. So if we were to, and COVID was actually a blessing for us, because this gave us the opportunity to have the time that we needed, even just the neural pathways that we needed to be breaking from the routine of shooting, to like, all right, what else can we look at here? And we realized that, yeah, it was a replicable process, so that we could handle the recruiting and training of virtual assistants on how to serve photographers and help them live their wild and beautiful life the way they want to live it. And so that's what we provide.
That's amazing. And how many VAs do you now have as part of your team?
Nearly 50. So I think it's like 40, 47 or something. And we've got a plan to get to 150. That's the plan. So I'm heading over to the Philippines in May as well for a big team building day. And it's probably the most fulfilled I feel in my life outside of my own family when we get to go and hang out over there.
So talk to me a little bit about how your team is trained, and then how photographers who start working with you sort of make that leap. Because I think that first time hiring someone, which a VA, it's different from hiring an accountant or having even an editor who just does one slice of your business. Like your bookkeeper or your accountant takes care of the numbers, and your editor just does photos. But a VA really touches a lot of different, or can touch a lot of different parts of your business. And as we've been talking about, that can be tricky. So I feel like there's almost a growth curve, a learning curve, certainly, to working well with an assistant.
Yep. So on our side, it starts with knowing, I guess, a little bit about your business. So just the form that we have on our site when you want to first express an interest in getting a virtual assistant, just finding out what website platform you're on, what CRM you use, basically any other software. So we have obviously operating procedures for all the different websites, all the different gallery software that you're using, all the different CRMs. So then once we know that, and it comes to then recruiting and training your virtual assistant, also I guess the main tasks that you are looking to outsource, then we know, okay, so these are the operating procedures, these are the resources we can train these VAs on, so that when they're coming to you, great, I'm familiar in using Honeybook and using QuickTime. This is not the first time that we'll be using this, so you don't need to show me, right? This is the dashboard. This is where leads come in. And then when it comes to obviously your website backend as well, we're on WordPress, platform. So this is how to create a blog. So all those moving parts, basically your CRM, your gallery software, your website, operating those things seamlessly. And then obviously if you've got to focus on Pinterest or something like that, or another particular platform that you're really looking to, social media management is probably the number one thing that most people want handled for them, which I really like, because I mean, I think God, what's that? I think it's 5 hours and 47 minutes is the average amount of time I think Americans spend on their phone. And obviously per day, that's from a book called Stolen Focus, which I certainly recommend. One of the big steps for me was like, oh, I'm spending too much time on this bloody thing, because it's incredibly good at doing that, right? So do not feel guilty. Like, you got the smartest minds in the world, the biggest budgets, doing everything they can to make sure you're spending your finite time on this planet on their platform to serve you more ads. All right. So it is hard to detach from that. But the beautiful thing is, like, all right, once I don't need to go on here to be making these posts, and then I get sucked into the rabbit hole, right? So once I've got somebody else handling my stories, my posts, my reels or whatever, it eradicates that need for me to go on there. And so then maybe, okay, I need to check my DMs or whatever, but I can do that on my web browser. So you know what? I can actually erase this app from my phone. And then, wow, what does that free up for me? When I wake up in the morning and that's not the first thing I jump on, all right, I can now start the day being proactive, right? What do I need to focus my time on? What are these most important tasks that I can do in my focus time right now, where my brain is on fire? Because I'm not going to waste that beautiful time in the morning. For me anyway, I'm a morning person. If you start to be proactive instead of reactive with that focus time that you have, it's like a massive unfair advantage over everyone else that's not doing that.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, great. I've got my team handling all my procedural stuff, handling the leads coming in. I know that's on them. Now, what have I always known is a pivotal thing in my business that I need to now put my time into to grow? And I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to do it.
Yeah. I mean, this was something that actually came up after we had that first conversation. I was like, oh, great. Okay. Let's connect, whatever. And then I pulled out my phone and I had to go onto Google to go to Instagram, because I've taken social media off my phone. And I remember
the respect I had for you for that. I was like, yes.
I know. And you were like, oh my God, that's amazing. I was like, I'm sorry. Because it was taking me, I had to log in and the whole thing. But that, it is funny. It's almost scary when you take those apps off your phone, because especially as a business owner, you worry like, oh, am I going to be missing something? Couldn't recommend it more. Now, everybody who is familiar with my social media for This Can't Be That Hard knows that Dana is like back there all the time, and she's doing that as her job. She's keeping me up to date. Sometimes I'm in there checking in, but I'm doing it proactively instead of reactively. And that really it frees up an enormous amount of brain space.
I do want to touch on, certainly not all rainbows when it comes to starting out with a virtual assistant, start delegating tasks. Basically, there's an emotional cycle of change that you typically go through. And change is hard. We biologically fear it. And we need to have like a vision of ourselves, or a vision of a future that comes with that change. That has to be so crystal clear that's going to help us overcome the discomfort of that change. But typically at the beginning, there's this thing called the emotional cycle of change, which I love, because I feel it's so accurate. But it starts with uninformed optimism. So you're like, oh, I've listened to this podcast. Great. I'm going to get a VA. All my tasks are going to be done. How brilliant. I'll get my time back. And then you'll start working with someone and you start to move into the informed pessimism phase, where you're like, oh, wait a second. How do I get all of this stuff out of my brain into somebody else's head? They did a task, but it wasn't quite right. And now I'm going to need to go back and look at my operating procedure. Maybe I wasn't clear, because we're actually really bad at kind of recognizing what we are good at and what's in our head, because we've been doing it for years. So you just kind of assume, oh, everyone else knows how to do this. And this happens all the time in my own kitchen, where my wife is a fantastic cook, and she asked me to do a simple thing. And she's just like, Rick, what are you, some kind of idiot? Like, why would you put that amount of salt in? Don't you?
Right.
So it does take a while to recognize, okay, how clear we need to make certain things, and foresee misinterpretations, and be accepting of, okay, I can see where they went wrong there, because I did actually say that, but now I need to know, yes, in this circumstance, I wouldn't do that. I would do this instead. So if you're an incredibly impatient person and, and actually Brian, that's something you touched on as well, in terms of that's the difference between getting from stage 4 to stage 5. If you're stubbornly refusing to change and you can't be taught anything, then you won't make that step. And
Yeah.
obviously that's fine. Stay in, keep doing it your way. And I'm not here to say there's a better way. It's just, this is my way. This is the way I did it. And if that works for you, then great. So after that informed pessimism, you basically go into the bottom here, the valley of despair. You're like, oh, okay, no, this is harder. I'm now doing more work than I was before, because I'm not only am I trying to do the work, but I'm also trying to train somebody and make these operating procedures. I'm just going to go back to doing it the way I was doing it before. At least I was, in control then, and I was going through. And that's typically where most people turn around and then go back to repeat basically those same 3 stages if they ever try it again. But for anyone that's able to persevere through that valley of depression and then get to informed optimism, where you're like, okay, I have put the time in now. I've made my procedure crystal clear. They are working on this. Now I can see, all right, they are making this album design the way that I would do it myself, and they're making those design choices. They've got the first 2 spreads dedicated to the guys getting ready, the next 3 spreads dedicated to the girls getting ready. There's no black and white and color on the same spread, whatever it is, because it is a training process for yourself as well, just getting your ideas out of your brain. And so now I can see, actually, that the task is getting done for me. Those slideshows are getting made how I would want them made, or maybe it's not 100% how I would have done it, but maybe it's only 90%. But that 10% of it being done not how I would have done it has actually allowed me the time to go and book another shoot, make an incredibly vendor relationship with somebody, go mountain biking with my mates, like create a memory in my life that I know I'm going to remember for the rest of my life, and that's more important to me than that 10%. And then your last step is success. So like, okay, great. We're on the right path here, and I've trained myself on how to replicate myself, basically, how to get things that I do into a process that somebody else can follow. Yeah. And even if they need to leave, the process is there so somebody else can step in and run that business.
Yeah. And that, even just the process of figuring out exactly what your process is, I feel like the first time that I went through that was pretty mind-blowing. But I love the fact that when you were talking about this, it sort of reminds me of the process of learning to, let's say, ride a bike. When you're 7 years old or 4 years old or however old you are when you learn to ride a bike, and there's a bike there, you're motivated because you see the other kids, the big kids, they're riding their bikes, and you're like, I want to do that. But from the first time that you try to get on a bike, you're falling over and over again, whatever. The lovely thing about kids is that they have this singular determination to move forward. And obviously we're hardwired that way. But it is the way that we learn to walk and talk and all the other things that we learn when we're little that are super hard to learn and require a ton of failure. I think that the process of hiring someone who's working with you in your business is one of the harder things that I have done as an entrepreneur. However, it is the difference between walking somewhere and riding a bike. Like, you get so much more accomplished when you're not the one bottlenecking every single one of your processes. And you're absolutely right. The first time is by far the hardest time. And you become better and better as the boss, as a delegator, in terms of like figuring out, this is how I'm organized and I've got these things all mapped out for you. So it deserves a healthy amount of respect and like knowing that the process is not going to be all rainbows and unicorns. But that picture on the other side, it is there and it is amazing.
That was just case in point of why you're running the podcast. I don't know, that was such a beautiful, succinct way that you put it, with a fantastic analogy. I was thinking to the last 15 minutes of me rambling, and in 1 minute you put it all together in a really easy to digest way that sounds great. So thank you so much for drastically improving on what I was trying to say.
Oh, no, not at all. No. And I mean, again, that came from what you were saying. It just reminds me of that. So tell me a little bit about your process. When someone is interested in starting to work with one of your VAs, tell me more. Tell us how that works.
Yep. So basically, there's an initial form where we ask you the questions of which kind of software you use, and then You jump on a call with our head VA, head of client success, Barb's. She's amazing. So a lot of people have, I guess, a fear, or there's a barrier there to getting a staff member or somebody who isn't from your own country, right? This is, how could this possibly work? So I challenge you to get on a call with Barb's and tell me afterwards if you still feel that same way. Right? Is this a person who has no idea what they're doing and could not be trusted with your business, or do they know exactly what they're doing? So they've been doing it flat out, helping photographers get to that level 5, and probably even know a hell of a lot more than you in certain things. Because I think we can admit there's a lot of things we could be doing, but we don't typically do because we're out of time, right? Yeah, challenge you to get on a call if you have that fear or you have that frustration about perhaps outsourcing to somebody who isn't from your own country, because a lot of people do, and that's what I love about those first calls, and what I love hearing about people who come off the back of them, like, oh my God, okay, we're on. So after that call, where she was basically just goes through the process of getting stuff out of your brain, what it takes to create an operating procedure, task template, what your daily tasks might be, what your weekly tasks might be, your monthly tasks, what your per shoot, like, your pre and post shoot tasks might be, and then any kind of projects you want to work on where your virtual assistant is, maybe they're done with their tasks, and you've got like a big project that you want to work on. Maybe it's like blogging, right? I want to really boost the SEO, and I want to create a great resource for couples who land on my site, so they know these are the I don't know, the best places to get ready, or these are the awesome shoot locations, whatever it is for your particular business. Like that's a thing that you've always wanted to do but never got around to it. Or maybe I want to get into Pinterest, never even opened an account, but I understand it's important. There's a lot of people I know that do it really well. So Pinterest is one of those things. That was me. Never had an account, but so many people still raving about it. So that was like, great, for those periods where I didn't have as many shoots during the winter, I want you to teach yourself Pinterest. So fortunately, we've already got the courses. We already know kind of the typical things that work well for it, so your VA can start working on that. And the same with blogging as well. It's a beast of a task that takes a lot of time, but fortunately, it's something that now a VA could be doing for you. So yeah, basically getting that stuff out of your head and onto a plan, and then teaching you, okay, so this is how you're going to be sharing your login credentials with us securely. This is how to set up a LastPass account so that we can access, your PicTime gallery, or we can access, your CRM, but we're not seeing your password, and then you can rescind that at any time. And then this is maybe a relationship guide. So all our VAs are in the Philippines, and there are some cultural differences. So this is some things to be aware of when dealing with them. And then, I don't know, other things. These are the holidays, these are the times that they're going to be taking time off, so you can prepare for that. But just working through all those little things that comes with taking on a new staff member, particularly, right, and especially if this is the first staff member you've ever had before, which for a lot of the cases for us that is true.
And honestly, this sounds like kind of a dream. I, at a couple of times, have worked with agencies when I have had assistants. And I have not had that kind of an onboarding experience. There has been the what's your tech stack, and, where are your SOPs? But it sounds like you're taking the extra step. That's probably super smart, because your target market is photographers, many of whom aren't going to have worked with a VA before, but giving them the tools for success is, I imagine, gives them a lot more potential for success. Because the first few VAs that I had, I went through very quickly. Not because of them. In hindsight, I realized it was because my sort of, even though I am a pretty organized business owner, it's one thing to be organized in your own mind. It's like my dad has a super messy office that he doesn't let my mom go in and mess with. And every time that she gets on his case about it, he's like, look, I know where everything is. So it's,
another great analogy.
That's fine.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is how my brain works, as an analogy. Yeah. So then what do you generally tell people to expect when it comes to the period of time from when they sign up to when they've actually got a couple of things off their plate and can start to see some real return on investment?
Well, to your analogy, it is like riding a bike, right? So if you've never had a staff member before, we've got to train you, right? So there is a training period here where we are training you to have a staff member. So you mentioned SOPs, and So for a lot of people listening, they might be like, what the hell is that?
Sorry,
It's a
yes.
standard operating procedure. So that's basically kind of going to be the backbone of your operating manual for your business. And for any business to elevate, right? For any owner to elevate, they're going to basically need to start putting together an operating manual with these SOPs of how to replicate yourself, how to do these tasks. And the beautiful thing is once you have it there, it's almost like putting an email template together that that you can then be automated, because once it's done, it's there, and then that really protects you from the vulnerability of somebody else leaving because, or maybe because obviously VAs are humans, so
Right.
other things can come up, or maybe they don't work out, then they leave. So you need to be able to, all right, have your manual here so that somebody can step in. This is why McDonald's can be run by 15-year-olds, right? Their operating procedures are immaculate. So we want to get to that stage where you're replacing yourself in as many things as possible. So we just have to teach you in those first, I guess that first month. Some people like yourself, you've had experience before, so you kind of know what to expect, you know what to put into this thing. And other people, there's a large resistance there. And for a lot of people, it might not work, right? It might be too much of a challenge to overcome, to put what's in your head either onto paper or onto video, onto an audio message in some way that somebody else can then come in and do those things. And we try to do as much of that as possible for you in terms of learning the software, the back end stuff, the dashboards. But if you've got a particular way of doing things, which I'm sure you have, I'm sure you've got your own secret sauce, we need to make sure that you're able to instruct somebody else on how to do that.
Yeah.
So that the first kind of 6 weeks is almost getting you on board with that. But then once you can do it with one thing, let's not start with everything at once, right? Let's just start training you to get somebody else to do your slideshows, all right? Or to whatever it is, make a blog post after your wedding, or to do an Instagram carousel, because that's not just training a VA, it's training you on how to do that. But then once you do that well, all right, then that's a fantastic breakthrough moment, because now the next time you go to do it, it's going to be so much easier, and you've got a relationship with your VA, and you're like, okay, you've got trust now, because you can see that they are capable of doing things, taking things off your plate. So now you can put that saved time into making the next operating procedure for the next thing you'd like to take off your plate. And then the more and more that happens, the better you get at recognizing which things can be taken off your plate. And not everything can. Not everything can. If you sat down and said, all right, new VA, I just want you to answer all my emails. And a lot of people do. That's a request that they
Sure.
have. And you've been running your business for 10, 15 years. So somebody new cannot just step in and just start answering all your emails with the amount of knowledge that you have, right? So you're going to be set up to fail if that's something like that. They're also not experts in all the different things. So these are general virtual assistants who are very good at procedural tasks. I think we do a lot of things, but we're not like, you can't say, okay, can you start running ads for me? No, that's probably going to be better left for an ad agency. If you need them to perform some high-level professional activity that typically, you're paying an agency $500 an hour for, that might not be an expectation that we can realize.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that it's a process to learn what those things are, see what the possibilities are. And then it's a relationship conversation where you're giving tasks and evaluating and giving feedback. And all of those things really do require you to step into a role that, again, can feel a little uncomfortable to begin with. But it pays dividends in terms of the time that you open up in your business, which can lead to, money that you add to your revenue. You mentioned this earlier, and it's one of my favorite things about having people who work for me is the fact that at this point, and specifically in my This Can't Be That Hard business, I am really pleased with the fact that I get to provide incomes for other people while at the same time, doing the job that I love. And we all talk about, as photographers, we love the photos that we make, and we love the fact that we get to earn a living making our art. Well, think about if you got to do that and provide a living for someone else. I mean, it's just sort of a compound effect in terms of the joys, I think, of entrepreneurship. So I'm a big fan.
I love that you mentioned that. I don't think anyone else has mentioned that before, because that really is one of the benefits that I don't think people expect going into it or know about. But is because they actually end up working pretty closely with your VA.
Yeah.
This might be a person that you kind of speak to more often than a lot of your best friends, right? Because it's daily interaction. And so, yeah, the relationships that are built there are pretty amazing.
Yeah. So good. So good. Well, we are out of time, but I know that people are going to want to know how they can fill out this form, connect with you, find out more, all the good stuff.
So if you head to weddingworkflows.com, and don't be put off by the wedding in that, or the workflow for that matter. Obviously, a name I came up with during COVID, because the first thing we offered was an automated workflow, but we have a lot of portrait photographers. So if you head to weddingworkflows.com, and then you'll see a virtual assistant page there, and then you can go have a look. All the pricing is there on the page. See other photographers, obviously their testimonials, all the stuff that you want to read about. It's there on that page, and then you can also click the Get Started button. And if you did want to go through that process and get a VA, you'll be asked if you have a code, and you can use TCBTH. And when you sign up, that'll give you your first week with a VA for free.
So for those of you who don't call my business all the time like I do, it's a long name. So This Can't Be That Hard. It's just the acronym for that. So TCBTH is the...
Thanks for clarifying that. What is odd code?
It's hard. I know. Well, and my name is hard to spell. It's just tricky all the way around. So Wedding Workflows, go to the VA page, use code TCBTH. Especially if this is something, if you are someone who, like many of my listeners, is anticipating a busy season toward the end of the year, this is the time, because that learning curve and that sort of getting everything squared away and buttoned up by the time that you get busy, you will thank yourself a million times over for this.
That's a great point. Yeah. Waiting until you're flat out is not the right time.
No, because not only will you not have time to set yourself or your VA up for success, but you'll also be compounding whatever impatience, you might feel in those early stages with the stress of, I'm already too busy for this. So you do want to pick a time of year when in the back of your head, you're like, I don't know, do I have enough work for this person? That's a perfect time to start. That
is a very wise words, really wise. So there's also a free task guide there. So if you're just thinking like, what kind of tasks could a VA do for me? You can have a look at the task guide there, and then it kind of gives you a little rundown of probably the most common things we do for our accounts.
Love it. So good. Well, Rick, this has been lovely. It's so nice to see you again and reconnect with you. And I hope that a lot of people hear this and hear the message, because it is an important one. It's good work that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of This Can't Be That Hard. I'll be back same time, same place next week. In the meantime, you can find more information about this episode, along with all the relevant links, notes, and downloads at thiscan'tbethatHard.com/learn. If you like the podcast, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Even better, share the love by leaving a review in iTunes. And as always, thanks so much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic week.